So this is my first time ever doing a podcast.
Yeah, ours too.
Yeah, me too.
Don't think that we're experts.
Hey, you've done this 2 times more than I have. So
Fuck. All right, let's cut back it.
All right, welcome back to the officially named Better Places podcast because we couldn't think of anything better. I am Mike, the urban Jersey guy, with my usual co-host.
Hi, I'm Nick, the rural urbanist.
And we have a guest.
Hey, I'm Matt. I run a channel called Metamodernism.
Yeah, are you not the modernist?
I don't think so. I mean, we can get more into that later, but it's just kind of a name.
Yeah. It doesn't mean anything, or
It kind of means something, but it's more just kind of like a filler for. I mean, I guess originally it was a filler for just whenever I would come up with something better. I mean, maybe someday I'll use my name or a shortened version of it, but for now it's just Metamodernism.
Yeah, I saw your logo is kind of like the face from what's that movie? Oh God, with the robot it's like the 1920s. You know what I'm talking about? Art Deco.
Yeah, crap. What was that called?
oh hey, I finally found your channel.
It's German.
Sorry.
Wait. It
was Metropolis.
Metropolis. There we go.
Yeah.
It looks like the lady from Metropolis or whatever, like the leader
except
person.
like drawn in the year 1990 on whatever janky ass VFX software they were using at the time.
Yeah, it's actually just something I found in like a library of like corporate stock art from like the 90s.
That's awesome.
Again, also just kind of a filler thing.
The best part about it though is the fact that you can see that the image isn't properly cropped, and there's just little white pieces on the edge of the circle.
we are professionals.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So why did you want to start your channel?
Yeah, I guess it was for a few reasons. One was that I had moved to the LA area for a job and started to kind of get into learning about urbanism and architecture, both things that I had been interested for a long time. And, being in LA, things are very different than how it was where I grew up, further east in Pennsylvania. And I guess I just wanted to show kind of how things were in LA. Most of the urbanism channels have a perspective from areas that are not LA. So, I think I wanted to show that off and show how
not
the
just
built environment
Northeast urbanism.
Yeah. Or even like not just the perspective from the Netherlands.
Definitely.
Yeah. No, but why is
Can
there
you hear that
Yes.
there's like a parade of like trucks and
Yeah, Mike, are you about to get raided? Are you about to get swatted?
did you expect the kind of popularity that you got from your Dingbat video? I think that's like over 1 million views right now.
Yeah, not really. I guess the way kind of my channel went was that just a few years ago, I was trying to figure out, some kind of creative outlet that I could have and really put my effort into it. Because years ago, I had tried several times to get into like making music production, just different types of art. And I had a lot of fun making stuff, but it was never something I could really stick to and get a product that was kind of respectable, I guess. So, after a while, I had kind of thought back to like working on different projects for school and in college where I had made short films and just really enjoyed that. So I had thought, okay, maybe I'll just make one YouTube video and see how it goes. And I had all these ideas and I decided to make one that I thought would be pretty easy to do, but it took me like several months about, making the video about the Harbor Freeway station where the Green Line and the Silver Line BRT meet.
Is that's
LA
the one where you like mix
Metro's
you
public
mix in
transit
like the
system.
sound of traffic over it, like
Yeah,
slowly?
yeah. It's very loud there because it's like in the middle of this giant freeway interchange. So I just spent a long time making this video. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm looking at the thumbnail. I just like why would you put a transit station in the middle of a highway? I don't know if you can like elaborate on that.
Yeah, so the interesting thing, which is kind of what the video goes into, was that the 105 freeway was the last new freeway built in Los Angeles. So it was just this one like east-west connection that the city planners and the powers that be really wanted to happen. And they started planning this in like the 60s, and it didn't open until the 90s. So sometime between then, there's this guy, he was a judge named Harry Pregerson, and he wanted to get as much out of the freeway construction process to like help the communities he could. So he created this program of like housing to house the people whose homes were displaced for the freeway. And another stipulation that he was able to get with like a consent decree was to build public transit in the median of this freeway, which on paper seems like a great idea. You're giving people mobility, but all the stations had to be in the center of the freeway, just exposed to traffic. And because of different Caltrans regulations about like sight lines, and it was very difficult, and in some areas just they didn't even try to like build acoustic attenuation to keep the noise out. So it ended up that you just got all these stations where you were in the middle of the freeway, it was really noisy, it was really unpleasant, but the train is really, really fast because it's completely grade separated. It can go over 65 miles an hour, which is easily the fastest in the, LA Metro light rail network.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what made this one the most fascinating was just because it was like multiple levels and it had this transfer. So it was like such a big and imposing structure almost, but like compared to the freeway, it kind of felt insignificant.
Yeah, because if all's fit within the highway or underneath the highway, it's like fully enclosed by car infrastructure.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think from what I'm seeing so far from the Seattle light rail project, which should have been the Seattle Metro project, it's going to be a lot of stations that look pretty similar to that, especially on the. I don't know if you guys have looked at that at all. Like, have you seen pictures from like the construction or any of the videos?
I know they have these really grandiose stations, right? That they used to have the BRT.
Some of them, right? Some of them are overbuilt. There's the BRT tunnel that goes through the center, which they're actually not. So the BRT tunnel was built with an idea that in the future it could be converted to light rail, which it was for. I don't know if it was line 1 or whatever they call it, but the new massive expansion that's going on, which is adding like 3 or 4 lines, I think, and it is going all other different directions. A lot of that's in highway medium, just like what you guys have with the green line there, Matt. And I think we're looking at kind of the same deal where I'm like, this might be a great grade separated transit project, but it's like the station's not near anything that you'd ever want to go to besides Bill Gates' house.
Yeah, I think it's tough, but I think in some ways, like what Seattle is doing is better than almost any other city. And like some of the stations aren't in great locations, but at least, from what I've seen, they tend to put the stations like next to the highway instead of the median. So at least it's more accessible on one side. And in the areas where they do have it in the median, it's really just replacing where existing median bus stations are.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, like in terms of being, the most accessible and walkable, it's not great.
Yeah.
I was thinking of like the real projects that are like the ideal ones you want, the like Vancouver SkyTrains that runs above a grade separated road or above a road rather than right next to a road. Like those are so hard to build because Montreal tried to build one with the REM East. I guess it's like not the city per se, but like a state enterprise, and that just like completely stopped by local opposition. And it was over a 8-lane like Strode essentially that they were trying to build this viaduct
because that's better. Yeah, that's oh, God forbid we build this like beautiful light and airy viaduct through something, but we have this Strode here that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, and there's so much potential when you just build it over a Strode rather than next to a highway, because like that Strode can get smaller as you need it to be smaller, while like the highway isn't.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because I've kind of seen this play out in a few places in California too. One recent project was the San Diego Blue Line extension for their light rail, and they built this viaduct around like the UTC Mall that's like over this, I don't know, either 6 or 8 lane road, which, you know, it's nice that they have this elevated grade separated rail, but also since it's above this big road that is not walkable, it kind of feels like a wasted opportunity.
But I guess it's at least it's a solvable problem in the future.
Definitely.
Where like you're not removing a highway viaduct which is next to a transit station, at least not in our lifetimes.
Yeah, but I think it gets interesting when you have to trade that with other stuff. Like right now it's the South Bay Green Line extension in LA, which I guess will be called the C Line extension, but I guess they might also call it the K Line extension just because of like how they're rearranging some of the routing on some of the light rail lines. But
they went from like colors to letters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and then, you know, after they built a different project, now they're like rerouting stuff, but who knows what they'll end up calling it. But anyways, they're like building this like really expensive light rail extension into some really wealthy suburbs because it was part of the plan to get just local support for a sales tax measure to fund transit expansion. So now they're expanding this train into a bunch of rich suburbs that don't want it. But a big thing that's happening is they have this like right of way that's, you know, from an old BNSF railroad route, and the locals don't want it to go on this because it's like in their backyard. They feel like the train's going to be too close to them, and to, you know, add the train, they have to.
Then why did they buy
around.
the freaking house right next to the railroad tracks? Like, I'm sorry,
Exactly.
guys. Like,
let's have empathy with them. These BNSF probably only ran like one train a week behind there.
But
the same issue happened in the Glasgow Camden line in New Jersey. Is Conrail only ran like one train a week, if not less.
Yeah.
Through that thing, so they're like, I barely even knew there was a train in my backyard, and it's like, but still, like, I don't get too much.
I think they feel like, oh yeah, I moved here for only a few trains, and now they want more trains, and they're gonna move the freight tracks slightly closer, and I don't know. But anyway, back to the elevated viaduct thing. The big thing that the NIMBYs have proposed as a new routing is taking it from the existing freight right of way and putting it in the median of like a large 6-lane road that used to have the Pacific Electric service in the median, which kind of sounds great on paper. You know, it's near a commercial area that could drive walkability, but they don't really have any plans to make that road more walkable just because it's right by a couple freeway entrances, and they're going to keep the road wide and they're going to keep it for cars. So now they want to spend almost an extra $1 billion building this elevated light rail line that really won't make life better for anyone.
Well, it's not their money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's someone else's money. Yeah. It's hard to do something that is what is the most pragmatic, because the most pragmatic thing almost always means interference. And that always means like there's going to be some grade level crossings. We're going to be reusing existing infrastructure, and people all feel like they have rights to this existing infrastructure, which if it's the road, you kind of do. If it's the BNSF rail tracks, you kind of don't. But like digging actual pillars into the middle of a road is a lot harder than people think. And everyone's like, why? Like, I see it in other places. Like, you just put the giant pylon right in the middle. It's like, no, you dig up literally everything in the road, move it, then you put the pillar. you're tearing up the whole road and every single utility that is underneath it.
Yeah, I honestly, I think that people oftentimes, especially like in the whole transit and urbanist community, also underestimate the difficulty of most things involved with transit and with fixing a lot of the problems that we have, because it would be nice if we could just do all these things and fix the problems that we've had the past 50 years. But
having a deeper understanding of the actual local issues helps you actually help fix those, rather than just saying, hey, someone did it over here. Where like Matt was talking about in California, they have very specific issues. They have incredibly wealthy landowners along a right of way, where like this is not the kind of issue that you're going to have in Cleveland. It's a different local issue, and you need different local solutions to solving this problem.
Yeah, and I think also you still have to walk the fine line, especially with us as YouTubers, have to walk the line between motivating people, but motivating people realistically. I want to be this positive force that tells people like, hey, we did it here. Why can't you do it there? But then also at the same time saying like, hey, here are the problems that came up when they tried to do this or something like that. And it's tough. That's why I'm kind of a fan of doing stuff stepwise when possible. But obviously, most people would want to do everything all at once.
Yeah, well, that's its own local problem. Where in New Jersey we get a chunk of funding at a time, and then it's a drought of funding for anywhere from a couple years to a decade. So you kind of do have to do everything at once. Like the whole Gateway project, which is an extra tunnel between New York and New Jersey, that was on the back burner for a long time. Now that the money's there, they just have to do every single project related to it while the money exists.
Yeah, and like I definitely feel like that's in a lot of ways the wrong approach because if you only build stuff big and at once, then it's all going to fail at the same time 50, 75, 100 years from now. And that's right. That's what we're seeing with the interstate system. That's what you see with the whole growth Ponzi scheme from
I
strong
I
towns.
live in a
Like,
state where every single railroad bridge is 120 years old.
yeah. Yeah, I know.
New Jersey Transit is just like a museum of railroad bridges.
Yeah, well, same thing in Massachusetts and New England as well, right? But a lot of these structures they didn't get there without consistent funding to keep them functional. That's also part of the deal.
I'm not sure about that one either.
Oh, really? Okay, maybe
Uh,
you can enlighten us then a little bit.
after Penn Central failed, or even before Penn Central failed, most of New Jersey's like rail infrastructure in like the 50s just stopped being maintained, and
Oh,
then they weren't really maintained until somewhere in the 90s when New Jersey Transit got some funding for it.
mm,
So
okay.
between 1950 and 1990, roughly, there was nothing done.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
So we have this project going on, a mall near my house. It's like kind of my childhood suburban mall. It's called Monmouth Mall, and it used to have like these pink tiles, the pink and like teal tiles everywhere, until they ripped it up and made it all like Calatrava, like white everything, uh, like impossible to clean. But they're trying to do this thing where it's like a lifestyle center, where they're building, I think, 800 homes on the premise where there used to be a parking garage, but there's like a huge issue to it where it's still in a giant traffic island. And I don't know what the real way forward is, but it kind of seems like they're just building a suburb in the middle of a shopping mall.
That's definitely something I've seen before. I think one kind of famous incident of this is the Annapolis Town Center in Maryland. It's kind of like an outdoor shopping mall and it has all these apartments above it, but it's kind of like what you're saying where it's like completely isolated. It's surrounded by parking. There's no real reliable transit to get out of there. So although you have a small walkable area where you can maybe go to the store or go to the restaurant from where you live, to pretty much do anything else, you have to get in a car and leave.
Yeah, that outdoor mall was like the next generation of the shopping mall. And it's like, we took the roof off your shopping mall. Are you happy now?
Sometimes now you get housing, but it doesn't really solve original issues with shopping malls.
Well, have you guys seen like the original concept for the shopping mall from Victor Gruen?
So I actually went to a museum and they were doing a thing on the shopping mall, and it had like those original concepts where it was like supposed to be more of like a garden in the middle and like as though you were in a downtown area, and it was supposed to look beautiful from the outside and the inside as well.
Well, even going just beyond aesthetics, I think Victor Gruen he grew up in Vienna, if my memory serves correctly, and
Mhm.
he really wanted to have a place which was almost a replacement of the downtown in the U.S. And so it would have had housing, it would have had shopping, it would have had a lifestyle and a fitness center, as well as hospitals, medical stuff, and all of these things. And I think it's funny from what you guys were both saying that it seems like we're finally just coming full circle back to like the original plan, because the one that they extrapolated from his ideas clearly is not working.
Yeah, Victor Gruen, he really hated what malls became. I mean, he was a progressive guy. He hated car dependence, and the big thing that he wanted there to be the hospitals, the fitness centers, like schools, but none of that ever got into malls. I mean, maybe later, but we can talk about that later. But it was really just stores at the beginning. Maybe you'd have a place to eat, but it was really just to shop and consume.
Yeah, and the ideal was more like this would kind of integrate with the downtown, more like what they're trying to do with these outdoor malls. I know in Atlantic City they have one where there was a road that was essentially mostly torn down, and then they went and made this outdoor mall, and it integrates with the actual streets. It's better than a giant big box. There are still some drawbacks when you get into these large development models where you have like your Westfields and stuff like that. Then they're carrying with them all of their usual brands. So you're getting your JCPenney, your Hot Topic, all of these. So it's the exact same stores in each and every one. And I'm wondering like how do you fix that? I think it's easier to fix post facto than it is when you're creating it, I guess.
It depends, just because there's so many malls that are just isolated islands. Like, what is there to put next to it?
There is this really large gap between a shopping mall and an actual sustainable community, which makes it so difficult. If you were lucky, your shopping mall was put right next to like a suburb, and you can just start integrating it in as long as it's not on like a highway island. But if it was on a highway island, then you kind of have to start from scratch and get the transit in there first, kind of design it around transit. I know Jarrett Walker always likes to talk about this, where he's like, you have to think about the buses when you're actually designing your subdivision, because it's cool and all to make a place that's super walkable and very like dead endy, but then you can't even route a bus through efficiently. So you're continuing to keep your insular community insular, even if you make it walkable.
Yeah, like I've noticed this with malls that have transit or that add transit in later. It's this huge inefficiency where the bus comes off the main road and then it has to go all the way around the parking lot to get to the main entrance, and then maybe has to have multiple stops inside of that mall before then continuing to the downtown, because we can't fund an express line to the down to connect the downtowns. Everything has to stop at the mall, and I don't want to know how many communities have a setup like that.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting phenomenon, especially in small town and suburban bus network development. I had a friend who was just looking through a bunch of really crappy bus routes and making fun of them. And one common thing was that so many of these bus networks, they would have either like a Walmart line or like a large Walmart diversion in the route. People who rely on these kinds of bus networks where they might not be choice riders, but they need to go to Walmart and they need to get food.
Yeah.
And the bus networks have adapted to do that.
Even like the workers, how do they get to work? Because most of them are on food stamps. Most of them are honestly, when it comes to Walmart, they keep their employees poor. So
yeah, there's like this weird diversion on one of the most popular routes in New Jersey. I think it's like bus route number 3 or number 1. And it just goes to like a warehouse park for all the warehouse park employees in the morning. So everyone who's on that bus is now diverted to go to the warehouse park. That is maybe a little bit harder to solve than actually getting your shopping centers inside of your line. Like your network shouldn't look like it's going like off the highway, on the highway, off the highway, on the highway. Mm-hmm. It should be like you're on an arterial road, you go into your shopping or you go into your store, you get back on the arterial road, things like that.
Definitely, I think there's varying levels of places that could easily convert shopping malls into walkable, livable communities. I think places like LA or Orange County, California, or like the Bay Area, like they tend to have malls within at least a gridded suburban area. So if you put housing there, like you can already have buses on arterials that go in routes that make sense. I think it's a lot harder when you kind of have to do something else.
I've been to LA within the past. I think I was there in 2019. Was the last time I was there, and it was shocking to me. Like LA is this big grid, and there's all this dead weight of the suburbs and everything. But downtown LA like seemed like it had huge potential, and yet when I was there, it just was not being utilized. And I feel like I don't know what your experience is with DTLA. You see any future for that being better connected with these potential future developments in shopping centers or shopping malls?
I think DTLA is interesting because in the past it was kind of the core of Los Angeles. It felt like what you would typically think of as like a dense city. But after World War II, nobody lived there. And, kind of became a place where the garment district or like the garment industry thrived in the garment district. But, due to different laws and regulations like that is no longer as viable as it once was. But, in the 90s and into the 2000s, it started to have a revival. People started moving there, and the transit agencies decided like, okay, we're going to build a network that kind of focuses downtown on being the main node and transit hub of the region. So I think there is like a lot of potential in getting people down there. And even now it is the area that's building the most housing out of all of Los Angeles and out of cities in the entire country. It's number 2 after Atlanta in terms of building new housing. So, but as you can see from walking around there, like there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
Like tons more people
absolutely
can live there and should live there. And a lot of the businesses like are having a lot of trouble thriving, especially after the pandemic, where like there's not really as many like office workers and like the financial district just constantly patronizing the businesses.
There's this whole like chicken and the egg thing where it's like you need the housing downtown, but you also need like the kind of daytime culture downtown as well to keep the people there. It's like so hard to kickstart. But I think like part of the solution is kind of going from the kernel where there is the best walkability, the best like daytime life and nighttime life, and then building off from there and just having it grow from in like concentric circles from that location. The only issue with that is that's usually the wealthiest area, and that has the highest home values, has the people who are most active in politics.
Yeah, I think downtown Los Angeles is kind of interesting right now, just because like I guess the neighborhood that really feels like the most vibrant and most urban is not really downtown, but Koreatown, which is actually like, it depends how you draw the lines, but it is at least what feels like the densest residential area in terms of like people per square mile. And I think, downtown will probably surpass it someday, but it is kind of weird how there's that imbalance. And I think like there are other cities where you have that too, where like the downtown does not feel like the most urban and vibrant place. But, there's like been a lot of progress made, but it kind of comes in waves. Like, years ago, there was a councilman named Jose Huizar who was doing a lot of great work to, improve the area, walkability, transit. He was, reactivating streets that were kind of run down and making them into places that people enjoyed to be. But this guy also engaged in some corruption with some Chinese developers, and he got in a lot of trouble for that.
Love to see it.
Yep. So, he was out and a new guy came in named Kevin De Leon, and he's a whole thing. He got embroiled in multiple scandals. He's been involved with the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, which is an organization that does develop affordable housing, but they also are run by a very NIMBY and anti-housing person who, spends a lot of money fighting housing all over the city.
Great.
And then, he also was embroiled in another scandal where his tapes of racist audio was leaked, and he got in a lot a lot for that. But he hasn't stepped down. He's still the councilman. And there's plenty of rumors, but he probably just really wants to make the salary, and nobody is forcing him to quit, so he just stays.
This is like the Wikipedia page of any mayor of a large city in the US is like the like said racist things, like is connected to these really really shitty nonprofits, like just all down the line.
No, like honestly, oh god, like any politician in Boston or Chicago or New York for the past like 50 years.
You could really just name any large city and you'd be right.
Yeah.
And to what you said, like, there is a ton of potential, like, and there are plans to build much more housing. There's plans to build much more transit, and like things are happening. But it's a bummer that at least right now there isn't a politician really advocating to take it to the next level. And like there also is this like big rezoning plan that's in the works to remove all the parking minimums, like allow way more density in most areas, and it's it has to be approved by city council by May. And if they don't approve it, then it has to go back through another like multi-year approval process. So if someone doesn't step up and push this through on a vote, they're going to lose all that progress.
Yeah, it's so difficult because if you turn over like maybe the mayor, you still have your whole council that all these laws go up against. So it's like the mayor's on your side, but you still have all these councilors, or like one councilor is on your side, and then like all these things happen. I like to say Jersey City is kind of close to making this breakthrough. They have a mayor who actually cares about things like people living in houses rather than on streets, and people not dying when they get on a bicycle. Which is like, I guess it should be the bare minimum, but it doesn't seem like that is. The real issue is not actually just caring about that; it's getting everyone aligned. And I think he's like built enough of a coalition to get a lot of this done, where at least some of the ward councilors actually will vote on these things that improve those things.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, if more and more people realize that it just takes, one person to start it, to become motivated as a politician, to do the right thing, to fix problems, I honestly think we'd see a lot more places around the country and around the world fixing the problems and mistakes of the past 50 years.
It's one person and creating. People would call it a political machine. Some other people would call it a coalition. Or you're building the coalition from the people who already exist there, which is kind of a crapshoot.
Mm-hmm. I have one more LA point, actually, or question for you, Matt. So when I was there in 2019 in LA, I had to fly in from Arizona, and then I took the bus to the Union Station. Now, there is a street across the road from the main entrance of Union Station. I don't know if you know it, but it's almost like a little pedestrian mall. It's called
it's Olvera Street.
Olvera Street, yeah. And that is like the most wonderful little street. And it's so cool. You just step like right out from the station. I was like, oh my God, Los Angeles is amazing. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on Olvera Street, but then I'm looking at it and there's just like a huge parking lot behind it. Do you know any of the story of Olvera Street at all, or like that area in general?
Yeah, I don't know the whole story, but I do know that it is very much a curated and kind of touristy thing now.
Yeah.
So it kind of has the problems that some malls have, where it's very much, they probably cater a little bit too much to people who drive in.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big public parking lot there. All the stores might not necessarily be run by like people who are connected with the culture that they are trying to show off with having this historical street. But I do think it does have a lot of potential, and it just shows you if you build other places like that, you will drive a ton of pedestrian traffic.
Yeah, especially right across the street from Union Station.
Like, how do you? You said like everything is like very curated, and I was thinking about like how do you get the serendipity of a place that's kind of just arrives naturally, like shops. You have your pickle shop, you have your cobbler and all that. Like that doesn't, you don't put those things into a place nowadays. And I was thinking about it, and when I think about it, I'm like, oh, this is what a flea market is. And I'm not sure what that's called in other places in the world, but like
I think
what do they call them? The back of a car, a boot fair.
Yeah, I think they call them like. This may be something else, but I think I know Southern California has like swap meets where they'll have like it'll be either just like a big parking lot, or often like an old drive-through or drive-in theater where they just like have a ton of vendors set up and sell stuff.
Or a peddler's village is also what they're called.
Yeah.
Oh, like that. think that's kind of like the serendipitous, like kind of like urbanism that we need. We need to just have these places that can be filled in random ways.
Yeah, and first point, just want to show you how different German is from English, because do you know what the word for flea market is?
What?
Flohmarkt. It's literally like there's like two letters different than the English word, but
But it directly translates, really?
yeah, I'm would almost guarantee that one or the other is stolen from one of the other languages. Like it probably was like someone just looked at it and said, "Huh, okay, let's just translate this and make it German now."
Mm-hmm.
But I also think flow actually means something different, and I don't know the definition. But yeah, the only problem with stuff like flea markets and farmers markets, honestly, and I'll get to like my idea of the solution to this, is that they usually are just big parking lots during the rest of the week. You know, especially if you have like a Saturday's farmers market, not farmers market. And
a little of the Bastin coming out of you.
Yeah, I hide it. I don't even have it. My dad's from fucking South Jersey. All right. Anyways, but yeah, no, but the solution, like the German solution, honestly, what used to be the US solution was this like idea of a central plaza in your city, or a market square. Yeah, which very few places in the US still have as like an active market square. But it's super common here in Germany, and I don't know about the rest of Europe, but you just have, honestly, your markets or your local farmers or producers of goods will come and just like inhabit that square one or even several days of the week. But then instead of it just going back to being a parking lot, it goes back to being a pedestrian plaza, a pedestrian mall, whatever have you.
I know. So Montreal still has one of these. They have like Place Dame, and like they also have pedestrianized some of the streets around their mall, around their museums. But another old place that still has one, New Orleans also has. I think
really?
It's also like their palace of arms or whatever. It's, you know, the French words for like the marching grounds, and like all these cities have them, but like a lot of them now are just actually just like grassy parks with a bunch of statues in them.
Yeah.
But these are like a few of the ones that still have. They're like all cobble brick. People can come down and sit down, and then like it turns into a market on Saturday and Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think of like what the modern version of that is, and I think it's kind of like what the Atlanta Beltline Trail is, where it's. I mean, not every city can do something like this, but it's recreational. You know, most of the time, some people use it for commuting. It's very very multi-use space, so a lot of people are always going through there. But off of the Beltline, there's these larger parks, and the parks get turned into like weekend markets and stuff. Or there's like a like outdoor beer garden
That's
on the
awesome.
weekend. Yeah,
I think one good solution is just closing off streets.
Mm.
You know, I think there's plenty of places like kind of like a farmer's market where you can just, you know, close down a stretch of street or even like permanently pedestrianize it, and then you can have a space for that.
Yeah. And I think that's like the great thing, is that sometimes when you do something temporarily, it becomes a permanent thing too. And that's
people
great.
want it more.
Yeah. Well,
Jersey City pedestrianized. It's like two streets and it's downtown, and all of the like restaurants along there, they get to move their chairs out on the weekend and have like 3 times the amount of seating space.
Wait, Mike, what? You're telling me that these restaurants didn't immediately close because they lost the 2 parking spots directly in front of their business? How is that effing possible?
I don't know. I guess like the streets around are just turned into giant parking lots because of this.
Wow. All right. I'll believe it when I see it.
It's like one of those places where you can kind of like walk off the pedestrianized street into the subway. But you really don't need a subway for that. There's plenty of places in the suburbs which shut down their streets for market days. They have their like craft fair or whatever that they might do like twice a year, or like their seafood festival or whatever. And it works out so well. There's a town called Belmar in New Jersey, and they have a seafood fest, and they shut down the whole town for Seafood Fest to the point where you can't even come in with your car because they run out of parking. So everyone has to like take the bus in.
Oh my God. That's how you push transit. Just make all the parking full all the time. Honestly, people totally underestimate the value of like events like that or markets, because it's something that draws people to the downtown, but also which provides a service to the locals that live there. Like there's in Munich in the center, and it's been there for over 100 years, a market called Viktualienmarkt, which translates to victuals marked, by the way. Mm-hmm. Same language, I'm telling you. I mean, people really do shop there. It's filled with vegetable producers, cheese, meats, everything. It's like an outdoor supermarket that runs the entire year and also has a few restaurants. Like it's a wonderful, practical thing.
I'll say the one thing that I love about all of the really walkable places that I went in Europe and even in places like New Orleans is outdoor music. You're not going to get that anywhere else unless there's a ton of people on foot who are willing to just stand around and throw a few dollars into a hat just to listen for a few minutes.
Well, I don't know if one of you guys can maybe answer this. I don't know, but like, have you ever just like seen a musician? I mean, have you seen a musician outdoor somewhere where it just doesn't make sense for them to be? Because I can't picture like a guy with a guitar and a hat standing at a bus station on the side of a road. But I don't know. Maybe you guys have seen more of that than I have.
There's some subway stations in New York where the train is so loud, it's like almost a jet plane, like 120 decibels, and you're like, why is there a person here playing an acoustic guitar?
Oh, God.
So like half the time, the trains come every like 2 minutes, so like half the time it's just like,
yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know if any of you guys have ever ridden the transit in Boston, but the Orange Line, and I don't know if it's still like this since they shut it down.
Wait, Boston still has trains?
Yeah, well, we're working on that. That there may soon be none, but for the moment, we still have them. If you can call the Orange Line that, it's just rust on wheels. But it was the loudest freaking place in the universe, or everywhere in the Orange Line there's no dampening. There was no like proper construction of the tracks and the ties
it's not like jointed rail. It's like the old fashioned one where they lay like 100-foot rail segments, or maybe it's even shorter. So every time it goes over, it's like clunk, 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 clunk.
Yeah. Except that, but faster. And so like any musician that plays on the Orange Line is an idiot. I'm sorry,
or they need percussion. And They need to like sync up with the beat. You need to like have like the circular like moving faster. Yeah,
that's a damn good idea.
That's a free idea.
I'm quitting my job. I am moving to Boston, and I'm going to be a drummer in the subway. Thank you. Good night.
You need to go to Japan, do your Shinkansen music, where it's just like a slide flute, just like.
Oh, that's so cringe, dude. Oh man,
you're welcome.
If I hadn't been out last night at the Stark Beer Fest, I would be joining you.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I have a little bit of Compass Box Peat Monster for all of you Scotch heads.
Oh wow,
sounds fancy.
Yeah, Matt, do you drink anything or no?
I do. I mean, I'm not that pretentious about it. I'm trying to be someday I'll get there.
I'm drinking alcohol.
I'm drinking Rolling Rock, straight out of the greenies.
I only drink.
I like a good bourbon, but I'm not well versed in it.
Yeah. Are you not a fan of God's finest Pabst Blue Ribbon?
I mean, I've enjoyed many a PBR.
Oh yeah.
There's this dive bar near where I used to live that would have this thing called a trailer park, where they would get you a pitcher, and it was just like filled with ice, PBR, and lemon slices.
That's wonderful.
It's such a dive bar thing to give you PBR.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know much about West PA. Is it a lot like East PA, where it's like a lot? Well, I guess East PA is mostly like mining towns, or like 5,000 person mining towns, and then every once in a while there's the town that processed all of those mining ores, like Bethlehem steel and stuff like that. Is that like a similar typology in Western PA?
Kind of. There's also a lot of coal mining towns, a lot of steel production towns. There's even some towns like Ambridge, Pennsylvania, which was named after the American Bridge Company. Like they made bridges.
Ambridge, wow.
So yeah, very much, industrial, old steel mills, stuff like that. I think the coal they mined there was like a different kind of coal than Eastern PA, but
it's not that
it's
good
similar.
anthracite.
Yeah, was there like actually a rivalry back in the day between East PA coal and like West PA coal, or just I know there was in general.
There was a rivalry between their football teams. Like there was like the Anthracite League, and then like whatever the one was in Western PA
or whatever.
Yeah,
there was this steel mill called the Homestead Works, and eventually tore down the steel mill and converted it to this big like strip mall power center.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's very much not great urbanism. It's,
it all comes
all these
full
like
circle.
big box stores all in a line. But the one cool thing though is they kept the smokestacks from the steel mills.
I like that.
At least there's like one little remnant left.
When they get rid of all the
like
pharmaceutical companies in New Jersey, I want there to still be like the Merck's smokestack and like the, I don't know, shearing plow. They don't exist anymore. I need to learn more about
I have a rule, and that rule is never waste a good brick.
Well, okay. So let me tell you something. After I made that video on facadism, I learned that sometimes when you're like, oh wow, I'm so glad they saved that brick building, they actually completely rebuilt it from scratch.
Oh god. Yeah.
There's like the Battersea Power Station.
Yeah.
The very famous one. It looks like an upside down chair.
Yeah,
if you've ever seen it. Super cool. They completely rebuilt the smokestacks. They completely tore those down, took down most of the brick, rebuilt the brick up, recast those smokestacks, so they're all brand new.
But they didn't waste a good brick. They just put them right back in place. Don't waste a good brick, I'm telling you.
Sigh.
They don't make them like they used to. They just don't.
Have you been to Baltimore?
Yeah, it's where my parents met.
Oh, nice. Yeah, they have this like, it's like, I don't even know what's in there now. They've changed the tenants so many times, but there's like the old Pratt Street power plant in Inner Harbor, which is this like old, I guess it was a power plant for, powering the streetcars and stuff. And, I don't know like how much was like rebuilt when they renovated it, but it's pretty cool because it's just like so much brick that's all intact. And, there used to be like a Barnes and Noble inside it, I think. Maybe it's still there. I can't remember. And at one point they even like tried to do like this Six Flags like theme park concept in there, which is interesting.
Adaptive reuse is sometimes very hard.
Yeah,
especially when you have these large buildings. That's why they almost always get turned into museums. It's because museums just they just like, we will consume all of this massive space to whatever extent is possible. That's I think one of those old power stations in the UK is what's called the Tate Modern Museum is in an old power station.
Oh, okay. I have to see that if I go visit London.
Like that's another thing about like turning buildings into housing. Everyone's like, yeah, we should turn all of these office buildings into housing. You got to look at the floor plate, man. Like where are you getting windows?
It's like everybody in the center of the tower is just going to be living in a cage like it's Hong Kong.
Yeah. It's like, no, like,
yeah. I mean, sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. But of course, everybody has to like act like something's a silver bullet or a completely useless idea and like nothing in between.
Yeah.
It's
like there's some solution here, and it might not be turning this whole thing into housing. Is it possible to live car light in LA?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it depends where you live. Obviously, if you live in like the most suburban neighborhood possible, you're gonna have a bad time. But I don't always agree with like the 15-minute city thing being like the silver bullet to urbanism.
Rabble.
But I mean, how it's been portrayed in the media recently. But I think as long as like most of your needs are close by and and you can potentially take transit to work, like you can probably go most days of the week and not have to get in your car.
Yeah, like I think the ideal is either having work be accessible not by car, or having everything else being accessible without a car. If you get one of those two, you're like getting really close to the peak car light situation.
Yeah.
Because where I am right now, I can take the ferry into work. I can walk most places, but I can't. It's a little bit difficult to like get like groceries and stuff walking.
Yeah, it's kind of the same for me. Like I decided to move closer to work about a year and some change ago, and I can either bike or I can take the bus, and it's really nice just not having to worry about getting in my car or having to go in traffic.
Mm-hmm.
But for things like groceries, like there is a grocery store that's close to me, but it's not necessarily the one I like. So I think having a car helps for doing those trips and getting groceries, or maybe going to the dentist or something where it's a little bit tougher to get to. But I think like in a scenario where they had like an easy car share program, like a zip car or a gig car, like I could absolutely see myself selling my car if I had that.
I think car sharing, honestly, that's totally correct, is like the most important bridge between being able to be car light and being able to be car free. Me and my wife, for example, the only reason we haven't, well, not the only reason, but one of the main reasons we haven't sold her car is because we don't want to be excluded from being able to go into the nature, for example, to go hiking.
Yeah.
And we both have Bond Card 100s. However, as much as we have used that to go hiking, we can't use it all the time.
And there's always going to be that one place that's just not accessible that you really want to go to.
Yeah.
Like I was able to go to like Castle Neuenstein, or like it's a huge
Neuschwanstein.
Neuschwanstein. We'll just we'll cut in what you just said while I was saying words.
Perfect.
And I'll kind of I'll tone match.
Watch you not do that. That would be really funny too.
And you guys didn't even know that happened because I edited it all out. So I went to that place. And it's like, of course, that's a huge destination. It's in a beautiful place, but like, there's a lot of places around there that are completely inaccessible that would also are very beautiful places.
Yes. And I think that is a state and region problem here, because Bayern, Bavaria is sometimes not known for having the greatest like local transit. It has really some great connections with long distance trains and even regio and like regional stuff. But when it comes to like every town being served, it's not always possible. But I mean, you have to kind of weigh the benefits of like, would serving this place totally destroy it too? And that's something, if you set up a line from, a beautiful major tourist destination like Neuschwanstein to literally anywhere else around there, you run the potential of absolutely ruining it. Yeah.
You can't have 10,000 people a day coming through there on like a light rail link to a major city.
Yeah, exactly. You have to like control the flow somehow. That being said, I still think Bavaria needs better local bus connections and, depending on the city, better bike infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. I was so surprised that like one of our biggest destinations, one of our most beautiful destinations in New Jersey, the Palisades, which is like along the Hudson River. If you're looking from Manhattan, it's like the beautiful cliff face. That's like not accessible by bus at all. You can see Westchester from there, and like you can see down into the Bronx from there. If it's that close, it really does need to have a little bit more thought put into getting people access to nature.
Yeah, I mean, how is it in LA with like? I mean, outside of
you have big mountains and stuff and all that around there.
Yeah. I think there is in some places transit options to get there. There is a bus that a few times a week will take you from like San Bernardino, which is like the outer stretches of the commuter rail system, like up into the mountains in Big Bear.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you like carefully plan your trip and you're staying overnight a few days, like you can make it work. But yeah, it's definitely something that's lacking, and I think probably needs to be expanded. Like I have seen that there are like a few pilot programs that have happened, and plans to bring on new bus lines that will take people from just different light rail lines or different transportation hubs and take them up to the mountains. Of course, like it is kind of a bummer to like have that schedule where like you really have to be back to the trailhead to get your bus back. But like there is like a massive amount of mobility you can get just by having, bus lines that go up to these areas.
Yeah. They just need like New Jersey, we have all of our mountains paved up to the top of the mountain. So you just have the bus go to the top of the mountain, and once you're done hiking up, you just hop in the bus and go home.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
You guys
I'm saying that's what you guys should do.
Oh.
Like we're
I mean, not all the mountains are really feasible to pave the whole way to the top. So.
Hold on, Mike.
Yeah, but I guess there is.
Mike, you guys have mountains in New Jersey? Is that a statement you're willing to stand by?
Yes, we have the Appalachian Trail goes through New Jersey. We have the Watchung Mountain Range. We have the Palisade Formation. Need I go on? I have Mount Mitchell in my backyard. It's 350 feet tall.
I've never heard of it.
Florida.
Therefore, it doesn't. Wait a minute. 350. What is that? What is that in meters, sir?
120 meters.
Wow, that is a mountain, or as you would say here, a hygge hill. Please.
Hygge.
Telling you it's the same language. Anyways, back to Matt's point about the bus schedules.
So yeah, there is one mountain that does have an interesting transit option in Palm Springs. They have this like aerial tramway that goes up like I think most of the way to the top. So that gives you the opportunity to either take the gondola up and hike down, or hike up and take the gondola down. I mean, of course, like I think there's areas where like you probably don't want to build those on every mountain because like, you'd probably have to cut down quite a bit of trees, but I think it is cool and like at least have some like more touristy, higher traffic areas where people can experience that, but also have a mobility option to make it easier.
Especially when the base is like right in the middle of the city. Like Camelback Mountain in Phoenix is like in the middle of the city. And if they did a gondola there, just like drop it downtown and then like take the gondola from downtown up the mountain.
Yep.
I think more places need cog railways. Seriously. Like it's a great option, honestly. Also a New Hampshire invention, so I'm proud of it, therefore.
Actually, what I said earlier with this bus that only runs a few days of the week from San Bernardino to Big Bear, they actually studied a cog railway to connect the commuter railroad with Big Bear.
Really?
Of course, it came back and they said this would be multiple billions of dollars. And
yeah.
We don't have multiple billions of dollars to spend on this.
Never study anything. Studies are the ruiner of all things. That is why the Maine Department of Transit chief, I think, don't remember his name, was on the record like a few weeks ago saying, yeah, we're just going to run the fucking trains because they've been talking for a few years about extending the Downeaster like further into the more tourist regions of like Rockland, Maine, past Brunswick.
Mm-hmm.
And finally they found a partner, All Earth Renewables, via the Finger Lakes Railway in eastern New York. And they are going to just run Bud RDCs, like completely renovated Bud RDCs on that line. Cool. Yeah, and they're just going to do it. They're not studying it.
Wow.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about this thing, and I'm curious really what you guys think about it. So the city of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, is celebrating its 400th birthday this year. It's founded 1623. Anyways, we've talked about it before. What I am working on is a project to bring a railroad-based event to the city at some point this year, and I have been talking with literally anybody who has a historical train that is also like connected to the network in this part of New England, and I finally found an interested party who I'm working with to try and bring possibly some Bud RDCs, which were the last thing to serve Portsmouth, back to the city just for maybe a few days or weeks, just kind of for people to look at and get excited about rail again in a city that is incredibly constrained by parking, which never, because they never lost their density, really.
Yeah, it's on the water too, right? So it's like very limited expansion area.
Yes. The city does own a lot of land, but they're not going to use it. It's kind of just preserved forest land and then wetland as well. And like the city is pretty smart. They understand that you need to keep density because that's kind of what keeps Portsmouth going. Is this whole historic downtown, which is actually, and I think my next video is going to be about Portsmouth.
Mhm.
So stay tuned for that.
So are they providing? So is this other party? Are they providing like just the passenger cars, but also the locomotive?
Well, they're self-powered, so that's the first thing.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So those are the ones with the diesel power packs or whatever,
yes, yeah.
right?
So they, yeah, they would be providing those, and then hopefully we could pay CSX to. Well, first it has to leave a system in an undisclosed state, which may or may not be 69ing my home state. Um, Known as Vermont. But yeah, so it has to interchange a few times and then would be towed in, put in the rail yard, and then we would just work out the rest of the plan from there.
Is it going between two cities, or is it kind of just like going out on a line for like a picnic or something, or
Well,
what?
yeah, so here's the thing. I don't think the city's going to let us, for insurance purposes, let anybody on there that's not like associated with the event. So what I'm guessing is we'll probably tow it to a parking lot and then have like some like temporary platforming set up, maybe a historic event, some food. Like the historical society from Boston, Maine could come, and I don't know. We could figure something out. I'm kicking myself that Portsmouth didn't turn 400 2 years ago, because then we would have not, it would have been, I think things would have been, this is nothing bad on CSX, but it would have probably been a little bit easier with Pan Am, just because, we know
Yeah.
the people. The CEO of the railroad, his wife plays pickleball with one of the people I'm working with in the city. So like it was easier with a small railroad. Pan Am was founded by one of the heirs of the BNY Mellon fortune, Timothy Mellon, and he, I don't know why he did it, but he basically somewhat saved, somewhat didn't save like various pieces of the collapsing Boston and Maine network north of Boston and west of Boston as well, and kind of set up this weird, funky little, very large, I think, Class 2 railroad. I think it was the largest actually of the Class
Mhm.
2s. And they operated the old Western route between Maine and Boston. So, and then they
That's
just
cool. We need
randomly.
more eccentric billionaires doing stupid shit like
I
that.
know. And then like he decided he wanted to create an airline with the railroad, and this was around the time that Pan Am was going under. So they bought the rights to Pan Am. So, and then they slapped the Pan Am logo on a bunch of planes and were flying them out of our local airport. So there was Pan Am Railways Airways for a while, and which was headquartered in Portsmouth. But then the railroad took the name and used like the 1930s Pan Am logo on whatever stuff they felt like repainting, and it looked really cool, and it still looks really cool in my opinion.
It is a really beautiful logo. Is it the globe one? Is the
Yes.
31? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really cool logo.
Yeah, and it was just like I am somehow proud of this, even though they're kind of not the greatest railroad ever. But
It's like seeing Conrail nowadays. It's like it's the empty husk of something that was kind of good.
yeah,
And you're like, man, it just gives me the good vibes, even though it's like the withered hull of like something that was
Yeah.
once great.
and they were like the devil, and also they kind of allowed the Downeaster to happen, which I don't think they had to. So,
Mhm.
so what are some places in North America that you all think are making good progress on urbanism, but don't get a lot of recognition for it?
Obviously, it's Jersey City.
I knew that answer was
coming. Everyone, deep sigh. I will actually want to make a more serious note. I think a lot of the places in the Northeast are kind of stagnating a little bit, or at least places that were considered the powerhouses, like New York City. It's not really building out its like walkability and bikeability as fast as a lot of places are now. And I really think the Sun Belt, as much as we give it shit, there are a lot of huge networks being built out for recreation. And I feel like there's something really beneficial about building out for recreation first is it's a very easy sell to everyone in the neighborhood. And after you build out a full recreational network, you can start linking that up with like a more utilitarian network. So people can go from like this recreational trail that's along the river, like Arizona, along their river. They put it in like a concrete canal. It's like kind of like LA, but there's a lot of trails next to their river. So from there, it's very easy to build off. I think also Las Vegas has done a very similar thing where on these utility corridors, they've been building a lot of trails as well.
Honestly, I think the whole stagnation issue, though, that's a really good point because a lot of places did have a lot of energy in the past few years, and it just feels like that. I don't know. It feels like everyone's tired, and this extends to more things. But I don't know, it just feels like everyone's still tired from COVID and just everything the past few years, the war. I mean, all this other stuff, and it sometimes is maybe a tough sell to people that we should actually still give a shit about the places where we live.
There's also like this yo-yo effect where like a lot of progress gets made and then like someone who comes in is completely against that kind of progress that was made, like stops it completely and fires everyone in that department or does things that are equivalent to that. So all of the progress that was made by the advocates, they're like, oh, we made progress. Advocates step back and they're like, we're just going to let this happen. And then like all of that progress gets eaten up and it's from step one again. And it's really frustrating.
For sure. I mean, like, yeah, you'll get somebody who just like makes some huge changes and then it kind of stagnates. And then even, there'll be like cuts to bus service that happen due to different, economic things like the Great Recession, even like the whole country. It did a lot to really decrease the amount of bus service. And it's pretty sad looking back and seeing how many networks just like lost a massive amount of ridership because of this. I think like even like the powerhouse East Coast cities, like they've done a good job in the past catering to like a certain type of commuting, which is like suburbs to downtown. And, like I feel like those core networks have at least stayed somewhat intact in most places. But, if you lose bus service, you lose a lot of your mobility elsewhere. And, if you think about like what people's actual commuting patterns are, like the most popular commute that people have is from a suburban home to a suburban job, even though, maybe the bus networks were never great in the first place, but like, those are the places that often like lose the most service in these cuts.
Yeah. And I mean, like, if you think about it with transit, it's like a river almost, you have, I think, and that's something if people thought about like that, they maybe wouldn't cut all these connecting services because a river is only a river because of all these little streams and brooks and other things that drain into the river and that make it this massive thing. But like, and transit is really often functioning the same way, except that it can flow in reverse. So if we thought about it like that, we wouldn't be cutting all these little connecting services because they're making the main line possible.
Another thing I noticed was a lot of the transit agencies aren't reacting to the new service patterns where like the Port Authority, they run a train between Jersey City and Newark and New York. They just have not increased. They've decreased weekend service, even though it's the only service that has completely recovered. It's back to 100% of pre-COVID levels. Yet they give you less trains than they do on the weekday. It's like somehow these agencies need to be a little bit more reactive to what's happening. And it's even with like pedestrian infrastructure. Like I see more and more people out there walking every day downtown and stuff because people just like need to get the hell out of their houses and they're all at home. So they're going to be all in their neighborhood, walking around their neighborhood. And we haven't done anything to improve the pedestrian infrastructure and they're still like fighting against cars. And you just need to capture people where they are when they're there because they might not be walking for the whole time. They're probably going to eventually get a car. If they're not really taking transit the whole time, they're going to eventually get a car. And once they get a car, you lose all of that momentum.
And I think also this is a slightly separate thing. Coming back to the main point of like places that are not getting enough credit. I was just reading about this. Did you guys see the Strong Towns video about parking is destroying your city?
The one it was like in Arkansas.
Yeah, yeah, it's Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
watched that one.
Yeah,
I've actually been to Fayetteville.
you've been to Fayetteville.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, and I thought it was I want to hear about it because it depends on when you were there, but it sounds like recently they've been really making an effort to improve the walkability of the place, the density, bringing in like lots of small businesses, but also reducing parking has been I think they cut parking minimums very recently, and that's been a huge boost for them. Yeah, also along those lines, I think the Strong Towns channel reboot has been really interesting. But yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I don't have too much interesting to say about them, other than the fact that it is like a very much like a Sunbelt city where a lot of the buildings were replaced by parking. But they do have this thing where they kind of only made the roads slightly larger. They didn't like drive giant highway through it. So it definitely had that kind of like, if we wanted to fix this, it's pretty easy for us to fix it. Let's just start changing these laws and stuff like that.
Like they eat the sidewalk, but not the building itself.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah. No, and I think there's lots of good things to be said about, and this is kind of like part of the reason I started my channel to focus on smaller places, is that there are lots of places the size of Fayetteville, the size of Portsmouth, the size of Portland, Maine, the size of like all of these places that they're not too big, and so like they don't get a lot of attention, but they're actually doing kind of pretty cool stuff, sort of almost because of that lack of attention. You can do a lot of bad things if nobody's paying attention, but the inverse of that is you can do a lot of good things too.
It's kind of like the proving ground for larger cities.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel the same way. I think like the stuff you talk about, Nick, and just what some of these smaller towns are doing in terms of urbanism is both like a really good lesson for like how small towns can thrive, and also like even what bigger cities should be doing. And it's like a lot of people, especially in a place like LA, they'll say, oh, we can't do those things. We can't have developments with less parking. We can't remove parking minimums until we have transit. But it's like, but LA, it has transit, and much more transit than a place like in Arkansas. And
yet they're doing
okay, it might not be convenient for everybody right now, but like there's like so much potential for making those changes, and those changes can enable good transit and that kind of stuff.
Being a large city almost is a detriment sometimes.
Yeah.
Where they have this mindset of, we are the job center and everyone just comes here for the jobs, comes here for lunch and dinner, and then leaves. Where your smaller city, it's like if you're like a second tier city like a Fayetteville, then you're not like driving from Fayetteville to the neighboring city for a job, but you're also kind of more likely to live within the city of Fayetteville, all the people who work in Fayetteville to live in the city of Fayetteville as well.
Yeah, and I think also another big problem with being a big city is that you have maybe too many cooks in the kitchen, as it were. You know, you have too many people who everybody wants to get their say, everybody wants to have their opinion heard. And it's easier, you know, that happens in small towns too, but in small towns, you can actually usually hear almost everybody's opinion. And I think it's very tough. Big cities almost need to get better at ignoring people without ignoring them. Let me just clarify that real quick. I still think that it's important to listen to people, but it's also important that when you actually comes time to make a decision, that you make a decision, and that you do a good job with marketing and explain why you made that decision. And that's something that I've seen happening a lot here in Germany with Deutsche Bahn, with the fact that they have all these high-speed routes and things that they're making. They don't market it. They don't tell people why they're doing it. They're just like, we're going to build this thing through your town. Get out of our way.
To what you said about like input and, you know, big cities getting bogged down by everyone trying to have a say. You know, I think there's some interesting ways that plays out in LA County, where there's a lot of municipal fragmentation. Like, you know, there's just so many cities in one county that all kind of make up LA, but aren't really part of the city of LA. So where like LA will struggle to develop a safe network of bike lanes and build like bus lanes and stuff, because they just, you know, have city council members with a lot of power and, you know, groups that are all butting heads against each other. But like smaller cities in LA County, like Santa Monica or Long Beach or even Culver City, like they're just showing like, okay, you can make a lot of really good changes really fast. But the other side of the coin is sometimes they can, take away those changes really fast. If there's like a regime change and city council goes in a different direction. So there's pros and cons
like
to
how do you keep the people in charge of these changes the same people over administrations, and for them to also be like proactively making these things better?
Well,
and it's like that's why they try to make like departments, but the problem is like departments, like they atrophy very fast.
Well, you see, that's where your mid-level bureaucrat comes in. Now, your mid-level bureaucrat is the key to any great city continuing its momentum forward, because he, she, or otherwise is a lifer, and they will be there no matter what. And that's the thing. We're not very good at that in the US. There are some cities that really do have like lots of good bureaucracy, but like that's something that I've definitely seen here is you have a lot of stuff gets carried forward by somebody who it's just like that's their job. They do this for the city. They're not politically motivated. And as much as politics really does have its place with this stuff, when it comes to like carrying on the momentum, politics is not the right vehicle for that, in my opinion.
You need to build up a structure, and then the structure needs to be there. It's the whole conversation about like local capacity that we had, where it's like you have the people in the area that can do the job. You need the people who are in the government who can continue this work no matter what happens. You don't need to import them every single time that you need this work done. Every single time you need to expand a rail line, you don't want to have to import a bunch of people.
You don't want to always have to hire consultants either. I am saying this as a consultant. Don't hire me.
I also worked as a consultant, so I think we are the problem.
We are problem.
But the first step is being part of the problem. The second step is knowing that you were part of the problem.
Yes. Yeah. And honestly, it's funny. There's certain things with consulting where it's like when you're on the inside, there's actually quite a lot of people in consulting who really are not experts. And or who are experts in training. And so like, I'm on a project at the moment which got thrown to me very suddenly when I was on my way to a beer festival, and so I had nothing with me. Had to go out, buy some clothes the next day, and then just come here. But I think I'm capable of doing the project, but I'm by no means an expert, and I have to do it completely in German as well, and I'm like not fluent in German at all.
And they're paying you for both of these things, which you are not.
Yes. Well, I told them, but
they're like, no, we are billing you for $400 an hour. Like, you are now the expert, and you are also fluent in German.
Yes, surprise. It's a very real problem in transit agencies. Like, I'm not in that space with consulting at all, but like it is a real problem with California high-speed rail, which is not called to Casher. Thanks, bad feedback from the comments section.
I think some people said it wasn't, but they want to use it now. So I think we've done something positive in this world.
Good.
Wait, Matt's actually from California.
Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, but no, I was just going to say that, like, to what you're saying about like over relying on consultants, I think that's like definitely a place where California high-speed rail is headed in the right direction, because like I think you may have touched on this in your earlier episode, but at the very beginning, they were just like completely relying on consultants to get anything done. They just like didn't have any capacity in the department to plan things by themselves. And they were doing like these design build contracts where they would just hire one contractor to manage everything for designing and building it. But, in recent years, they have finally moved toward like, okay, we're going to like do more planning in-house. We're going to do design bid build contracts where they hire somebody to design it and manage that. And then they, bid on construction, and then, that's managed separately. But yeah, it is frustrating now that like it's taken this long to get to this point. Things have gotten more expensive. Like, it's still an incredibly expensive project, even if they're doing it the right way.
Yeah. The ideal structure, like that I've seen, is you want to be able to plan, design, and manage in-house.
Mhm.
So the only thing you're contracting out is 2 subcontractors. Like this, so you can actually chop every single job into a job that a subcontractor can do. So like subcontractors are fine. You need to employ lots of subcontractors, but you don't want to be contracting out your management. You don't want to be contracting out your design, and you don't want to contracting out your planning.
And you need to have a god. You must have a central authority that is controlling these subcontractors, or else you end up with the Berlin airport.
Well, that's your management part. Like you want to be doing your management.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say, it's like, that's a problem that LA Metro has, where like they've been put in charge of building like a massive amount of new infrastructure, and like, it's great that this is all getting built, but like the powers that be haven't really given them the capacity to be able to plan and design and manage everything in house. So like they've been just relying on so many contracts that push that onto a contractor to handle the design and all that, and just a massive amount of money gets thrown away on this, like just engineering fees to do all that, which is kind of a black hole. And like the frustrating thing is that like LA Metro plans to continue building rail lines for what is likely the remainder of my life. So like it makes sense to just spend the money now and hire people and create a really strong department that can do all this. Yeah. But
we need these people to just like live here
to make that happen.
I'll give you a very, very quick overview of some of the thing I was doing before. Was I worked for an electric company in New Jersey as a contractor. Basically, what we were doing was we were managing one of their projects, one of their giant reliability projects, which would connect New Jersey's grid to grids up in like Ontario and stuff like that. All we were hired for was to manage all of the underlings, all of the subcontractors, and they were extracting like insane amounts of money. People were getting paid like $300,000 to $400,000 a year just to be like these middle managers, when the power company already had these middle managers. And what they did was they essentially stopped paying them decent wages. They left the power company and they went to this contracting company and worked on the same exact projects, because the power company just didn't want to keep these people in house. And it's like, boom, now you're paying 3 times as much for them. Even if you only do one of these projects every 3 years, you should have just kept them in house.
Yeah, no. Keep your skills like in house as much as possible. If you need to bring in consultants to train people to do construction, to do something that you will never have to do again, do it. Mm-hmm. But yeah,
we need like my vision is we have like a Northeast alliance of states. They all get like some partial ownership in this company, where it's like a giant construction company that just specializes in tunneling. Because all of these projects that we need that need to be tunneled right now, it's all being sent out to these like 3 companies that do tunneling in New York, and they are allowed to charge whatever they want, because whenever a bid goes out for these tunneling projects, it's like literally one company that bids. And like you kind of need someone to share. You need all the transit agencies to share in the profits from like actually building this, but you need them also to share the expert, because we only do like one of these tunneling projects every few years.
But that would require regional level coordination, and I don't think we're there yet.
We do have the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. Yeah, so I think that's it. Matt, do you have anything that you would like to plug before we head out?
Not really. Just, check out my channel if you can. It's just called Metamodernism. If searching that doesn't get you there, just search dingbats.
Yeah, it's first.
You'll probably see the dingbat video.
I think I'm the only person that couldn't find it, so everybody else should be able to find it.
So, and for anybody who doesn't know what a dingbat is, it's just a type of really cheap to build apartment that was popular in LA in like the 60s.
It's a shack over a parking garage.
Yep.
Wonderful.
You can still find me at Urban Jersey Guy. I think you guys know that if you're already listening. Nick?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to ask you, you got any videos coming soon?
Oh shit, no. Yeah, so I had the burrowitis video. I am working on it. I swear to you guys, I am working on it. It is my opus, so it is taking longer to make, and I want it to be perfect.
I see.
So it's probably going to be a couple more weeks.
Yeah, I'm also kind of at that point. If you cannot tell from my lifestyle, it is incredibly difficult to sit me down and work on anything for more than 5 minutes.
Yep.
Or even to respond to Mike's messages. But I have hopefully a Portsmouth video coming. I filmed most of what I needed in November, but as far as actually writing the script, I've just been like just lost for a little while because I love the place so.
Chat GPT, bro.
No. Chat GPT doesn't know a damn thing about any of the stupid ass niche topics that any of us talk about. It's too niche. It can't write more than like a sentence. And when I ask about Portsmouth, it's like I can find more by reading a book. So yeah, I'm not happy with Chat GPT at the moment. But yeah, no, I'm a little lost with the script. It is tough to find a direction, especially when it's about something that you really care about and that you know you're probably not going to get in the near future a chance to get a do-over on it. So it should come soon. I want to do it before I lose monetization.
Well, good luck with that.
Thanks.
Make sure Nick doesn't get demonetized. Go watch one of his videos or something.
Please do watch the other farming video that took me like 6 months to make.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, coming.
Better Places podcast out. I'm gonna cut that out.